The Ardent Hope was a marvel of Alliance engineering. 5 kilometers long, suspended like a steel lung above the orbit of Dacier 3. Its glass-paneled spine glittering with transit drones and minor explosions from the cafeteria kitchen. It was an architectural symphony of diplomacy, high-pressure politics, and suspiciously sticky elevator buttons. And on this particular day, it also smelled faintly of burnt protein paste and bureaucratic despair. Lieutenant Commander Jonas Merrick adjusted the collar of his ill-fitting dress uniform and muttered under his breath, "This is a mistake." Beside him, the diplomatic attaché, a sleep-deprived man named Terrell with a constantly twitching left eye, nodded violently. "Yes, but it's a politically binding mistake, so smile." Jonas didn't smile. He had many expressions, exasperated, slightly sarcastic, existentially done, but not diplomatically appropriate joy. He was a systems analyst, a decent shot with a phase repeater, and the guy who always remembered to bring extra socks on off-world missions. He was not a handler, especially not of what they were sending him into the conference room to meet. The doors hissed open with exaggerated drama. Inside, dignitaries from 6 star systems turned to stare, most with curiosity, a few with schadenfreude. And then she entered, tall, elegant, ears like sculpted arcs, longer than human but not comically so, just enough to draw attention and perhaps catch low-orbit frequencies if she tilted them right. She wore a deep indigo robe that shifted hues with her movement, a sign of Saralathi rank, Jonas recalled from his rushed 5-minute cultural prep. Her eyes were the color of a thunderstorm scene from orbit, deep, swirling, faintly glowing. She didn't walk into the room. She arrived. Illyria Tessun of the Saralathi Order of Resonance stood across from Jonas with a look that could vaporize lesser men. He straightened instinctively. "Greetings," she said, her accent lilting but precise. "You must be my escort." Jonas blinked. Then, with the suicidal bravery of a man who had nothing left to lose, he replied, technically, yes. But only in the walk you to meetings and make sure no one accidentally poisons you way, not the wears a leash and calls you mistress kind. A long silence. One of the Grovians choked on his diplomatic cocktail. Illyria's nostrils flared ever so slightly. "Is that supposed to be humor?" "It's supposed to be disarming," Jonas said, "though it's clearly not working." She looked him over slowly, as if assessing whether he was worth annihilating on a molecular level. "Your species' concept of protocol is inconsistent." Jonas offered his most winning smirk. "You should see our sense of fashion, absolute chaos." And that was the moment something shifted. Not softened, she did asterisk do soft, but filed away, catalogued him under tolerable nuisance rather than intergalactic embarrassment. The meeting itself was standard fare. Posturing, gentle threats in floral language, and at least 2 declarations of peace that sounded more like passive-aggressive breakups. Jonas stood behind Illyria, arms folded, occasionally feeding her datapad summaries of human idioms that cropped up in conversation. He once made the mistake of letting an alien delegate interpret, kick the bucket, literally, resulting in a very confused security team and one traumatized cleaning drone. But things truly went downhill during the refreshments break. A junior officer, bright-eyed and unfortunately named Kevin, approached with an enthusiastic grin. "Can I get you anything, ma'am? Water, nutrient cube, something for your pet." He nodded toward Jonas with sincere optimism. Illyria's ears shot up. "My what?" Kevin's smile wavered. "Oh, I just thought, since he's always behind you and he, follows you around." "I am not asterisk her pet," Jonas said quickly. "Correct," Illyria snapped, rising to her full height. "He is not my pet, nor my servant, nor my domesticated human." Her voice rang through the chamber, silencing all conversation. The delegates turned. Jonas, for once in his life, had no witty comeback. He just stood there, blinking. Illyria's glare intensified. "I do not own him. He is a free, sentient being of questionable hygiene and poor nutritional choices, but he is not mine asterisk." Jonas muttered, "Thanks for the character reference. I am not responsible for his behavior, his attitude, or his irrational fondness for caffeinated algae drinks." A nearby ambassador coughed into his sash. Someone else was snickering. The room, for a moment, hung between mortification and comedy. Illyria closed her eyes, inhaled sharply, and sat down with the grace of someone internally screaming. Later, when the meeting adjourned and Jonas escorted her, silently, through the arched glass corridors, he risked a glance her way. "For what it's worth," he said, "I don't mind being mistaken for a pet. Some pets live in luxury." Get brushed, carried around, eat expensive meat paste. She side-eyed him. You asterisk are remarkably high maintenance. He shrugged. Comes with the ears. She stopped. Your ears are asterisk tiny asterisk. Jonas grinned. Jealous, disgusted. They reached the residential wing, just in time for the station AI to announce. Due to a lodging oversight, Diplomatic Suite Alpha 9 has been reassigned. Commander Merrick and Liaison Tessun, you are hereby issued joint quarters. Have a pleasant cohabitation. A beat of silence. Absolutely not, Illyria said. I second that, Jonas agreed. The AI cheerfully chimed, request denied, proceeding with environmental synchronization and toothbrush duplication. Illyria turned to Jonas, expression flat. This is your fault. Oh, completely. I told the AI I wanted a roommate who could kill me with her ears. She didn't laugh, not quite, but the corner of her mouth twitched. Once. The shared quarters were just as awkward as anticipated. 1 room, 2 beds, and a semi-sentient closet that kept offering Illyria evening gowns labeled flirtatious human attire. She disabled it with a single glare. As night settled, they each took their respective sides, backs turned, the silence heavy. Then in the stillness, something shifted. Jonas felt the mattress dip slightly, heard the faint rustle of cloth. The warmth at his side didn't announce itself. It simply arrived like her entrance earlier that day. She said nothing. Neither did he. He just reached for the blanket, pulled it higher, not out of obligation. Not out of pity, just because, somewhere outside, a passing shuttle hummed. Somewhere between them, the universe blinked. And for now, that was enough. The lights in their shared quarters adjusted to Illyria's circadian rhythm before Jonas could finish brushing his teeth. Warm lavender hues pulsed softly across the walls, echoing a twilight from a planet he'd never visited and didn't particularly want to. It smelled faintly of ozone, and those floral sour incense pods she insisted on vaporizing before bed. Like a space temple and a janitor's closet had collided. He spat into the sink and muttered, AI, adjust lighting to human sleep mode. The lights flickered, then deepened in color, violet darkened to near black as a panel chirped. Sleep mode conflict detected. Species, Saralathy, override denied, have a dreamy stasis. Of course, Jonas mumbled, drying his face. Why give the human anything? Behind him, from the bed she'd claimed, Illyria replied with perfectly calm sarcasm. You may submit a grievance form. I believe it's Form 29, subsection Epsilon F, titled, How to Complain Ineffectively. He turned just in time to catch the flicker of a smirk. It vanished as quickly as it came. Did you just make a joke? He asked, pointing a damp toothbrush at her like an accusation. I made an observation. If it sounded like humor, perhaps it says more about your desperation for social engagement. He threw his towel over the dehumidifier and made a mental note to one day teach her the fine art of the eye roll. Maybe after she stopped threatening diplomats with her tone of voice. They turned off their respective holoscreens, adjusted the bed dividers, thin as dignity and just as flimsy, and settled in. Well, Jonas tried. Illyria already lay on her side, a smooth, almost meditative posture that made her look like a porcelain figurine someone had posed in stillness. It was both fascinating and deeply unnerving. Jonas flopped. His mattress squeaked. She didn't even flinch. I'm still not your pet, he grumbled. She murmured, I know. A pause, the kind where silence wasn't empty but full of everything they didn't want to say. I'm just clarifying, he added. And I'm just breathing, she said. Shall we continue stating the obvious? He grinned in the dark. You're really good at bedtime conversation. Eventually, they slept. In the morning, a diplomatic briefing glitched halfway through a visual presentation on interspecies trade customs, resulting in a 5-minute loop of a Nevalac ambassador slapping a mango into a holographic bowl and exclaiming, now we are siblings. Over and over, Jonas watched it with something between amusement and spiritual fatigue. Illyria sipped a strange, iridescent beverage that smelled like bruised metal and sunlight. Her expression was unreadable, except for the slight twitch in her long ears. I'm starting to think your people invented trade customs just to confuse everyone else, Jonas said. We invented them to survive. Confusion is a secondary benefit. Jonas nodded solemnly. Noted, never mango slap unless you're emotionally prepared for a sibling. Illyria didn't laugh, but she did make a noise that sounded suspiciously like someone biting back amusement. They left the briefing room with new marching orders. They were to conduct a joint diplomatic inspection of the civilian sectors. Because nothing said galactic cooperation, like two snarky representatives being forced to nod politely at vendors selling glow-in-the-dark synth noodles. The habitat wing was built like a hollow cylinder, gravity stabilized through rotational torque. The effect made walking feel like a constant lean uphill, which Jonas hated and Illyria pretended not to notice. They passed through markets filled with scents both inviting and suspicious. Crowds of species with gills, trunks, bioluminescent tattoos, and at least one sentient slime mold wearing a fedora. Jonas gestured toward a booth with shimmering scarves. "See anything you like?" Illyria examined a bolt of fabric. "This appears to be constructed from recycled food packaging. Fashion and sustainability, that's what we call a win-win." "You call it a win, I call it crinkly." They moved on. Children chased robotic kites. A small, winged merchant tried to sell Jonas a bonded soul crystal and insisted it only screamed during solar flares. He politely declined. When they reached the medical hub, Illyria paused, hands behind her back, staring through the observation glass at the neonatal incubators. Inside floated a few hybrid offspring, new lives, tiny forms with features drawn from multiple species. One had ears like hers and freckles like a human child. Jonas joined her, the mood turning subtle. "They'll grow up on ships," he said, "in gravity wells designed by compromise. Half of them won't even know what it means to belong to a planet." "And perhaps that's not a tragedy," Illyria replied softly. "Perhaps it's freedom." He looked sideways at her. She wasn't smiling, but her gaze had softened. There was no pride in her voice, no politics, just a strange, quiet longing. Then she said, "That one's drooling on the tank filter." And the moment was gone. They completed the inspection, only mildly poisoned by a sample of crispy algae pretzels that Jonas insisted on trying and Illyria warned him about with an exasperated, "Your taste receptors are a security threat." Back in their quarters, Jonas flopped onto his bunk with a grunt. "We walked 12 kilometers in circles." "Rotation," Illyria corrected, pulling off her diplomatic robes with meticulous care. "And perhaps next time don't accept glowing food from a vendor who hisses when spoken to." "Hey, I like adventure. You like sodium." He laughed. "Okay, that's fair." There was a pause, not awkward, just quiet. Then casually she said, "Tonight I may require proximity." He sat up. "Proximity. For resonance stabilization, the artificial rotation affects my vestibular harmonics. Your presence mitigates the vertigo." Jonas blinked. "So you're saying I'm good for your ears?" "I'm saying your species emits a low-level electromagnetic noise that my body has adapted to." "Right. Totally not emotional, just electromagnetic therapy." She climbed into her bed without further comment. Later, when the lights dimmed and he felt the familiar weight of her curling silently beside him, Jonas didn't speak. He just adjusted the blanket, kept one eye half open in case she tried to annex more of his pillow and let her breathing lull him. It wasn't trust. Not yet, but it was something. In the dark, her voice barely audible, she whispered, "You smell like algae pretzels." And then, softly, genuinely, she laughed. The shuttle to Jaris IV coughed as it descended through the upper thermosphere, its left stabilizer shuddering in a way that suggested either a perfectly normal adjustment or imminent doom. Jonas Merrick, strapped into the co-pilot seat, decided to remain optimistic. "If this thing explodes," he said, gripping the armrest, "I just want to say I regret nothing, except that fermented jellyfish smoothie I had last night. And maybe not reading the fine print on the diplomatic deployment form." Beside him, Illyria remained unbothered, her long ears angled slightly back, eyes fixed on the blue-green curve of the planet below. "If we crash," she replied calmly, "I will ensure your remains are composted with dignity. You always know just what to say." Outside the cockpit window, Jaris IV came into sharper detail, lush jungle zones, wide rivers cutting through emerald terrain, and periodic flashes of electric blue from bioluminescent forest canopies. The planet was a terraforming success story, a joint venture between human engineers and Saralathi biosymmetrists. It had also become a diplomatic hotspot, with both species now vying for influence in a region still healing from earlier territorial disputes. Their mission was simple: show up, smile, inspect the cultural exchange zones, and make sure no one was trying to assassinate anyone else with fruit-shaped explosives. The shuttle touched down with an indignant thunk. Jonas exhaled in relief. The moment the hatch slid open, they were hit by a wave of humid air that smelled like citrus, damp moss, and something suspiciously like cinnamon. A greeter drone hovered nearby, chirping, "Welcome to Jaris IV. Warning, flora is reactive. Please do not pet the flowers." "Did that thing say don't pet the flowers?" Jonas asked. Illyria adjusted the strap on her field pack. Last time your species did that, it led to a week-long diplomatic incident. The flower was engaged. Jonas snorted. I forgot about the wedding ceremony. They followed the paved path into the edge of the jungle habitat, where the sounds of birdsong, interspersed with occasional synth tones from genetically modified insect choirs, set an oddly relaxing mood. The guide assigned to them, a wide-eyed botanical engineer named Vess, spoke at triple speed as he led them through the biodome. Right over here we've got the polysap trees, which secrete a mild antiseptic gel when emotionally validated. Very useful for cuts and scrapes if you whisper encouraging things. Oh, and those vines. They're called *flirt tendrils. They're harmless, mostly, unless you wear red. Jonas looked down at his crimson jacket. Vess coughed. I'm sure you'll be fine. Illyria did not laugh, but her eyes gleamed with amusement. They passed through sector after sector. Hover bridges spanning waterfalls, floating platforms covered in soft moss, and communal rest zones where children of both species played games involving magnetic spheres and unnerving chanting. Everywhere Jonas looked, nature and technology blended in ways that felt both alien and oddly comforting. At one point, they reached an observation tower with a transparent floor. Illyria walked across it with the same regal stride she used for battlefields and state dinners. Jonas, however, moved like someone tiptoeing across a minefield made of existential vertigo. You're not afraid of heights, are you? She asked. I'm not afraid, he said stiffly. I'm height cautious. She paused in the center of the platform and turned to face him, long ears catching the wind. If the glass shatters, statistically speaking, only one of us will survive the fall. Jonas frowned. Wait, which one? She raised an eyebrow. Right, he said, because you're genetically enhanced and I'm built like a reusable yogurt cup. Down on the jungle floor, the tour took an unexpected turn, a sudden rustle. A whisper of movement. Then *F***, a vine lashed out and wrapped itself around Jonas's leg. He yelped and stumbled backward, landing in a patch of soft moss. Illyria, lightning quick, drew her sidearm and aimed at the vine, which hissed and withdrew into the undergrowth. Stand down, she said to the foliage. We are guests, not prey. Jonas sat up, inspecting his boot, which was now coated in a fine shimmer of pollen. Well, I've been flirted with worse. Vess ran over, breathless. Sorry, that's Hesperus extensia *. They sometimes confuse sudden movements for courtship gestures. It was probably just saying hello. Should I send a thank you note? Jonas muttered. Illyria offered him a hand, her touch cool and precise. Perhaps wear beige next time. He let her pull him up. Why, plants hate red. Because beige is too boring to flirt with. They continued onward. As the sun dipped below the canopy, though sun was relative, given Jairus IV's triple-lensed satellite system, the jungle came alive with a soft bioluminescent glow. Every leaf, vine, and flower pulsed with faint light, responding to their movement like they were walking through a sea of breathing stars. They set up camp near a waterfall where the mist glowed purple in the moonlight. The station's AI had packed a portable shelter which unfolded into a sleek dome with temperature controls, light modulation, and exactly one bed. Jonas stared at it, then at Illyria. She tilted her head. Would you prefer I sleep outside? I'm certain the vines miss you. I'll take the floor, he said quickly. Later, with the dome sealed and the lights dimmed, they lay in parallel silence, Illyria on the bed, Jonas on a heated mat that beeped sadly whenever he shifted. You don't need to prove yourself humble, she said at last. I'm not. I just like having my organs where they belong. A beat. Do your people always use humor to lower tension? He stared at the curve of the ceiling traced by soft light. Only when we care. Silence again, then very softly. My ears are sensitive to emotional harmonics. When you joke, I feel it, even when I don't laugh. He turned his head. She was facing him now, barely visible, her long ears twitching once in the dark. Does that mean I'm good for your vestibular harmonics and your mood? Don't get arrogant. Too late. She didn't curl beside him that night. Not exactly. But sometime just before sleep claimed him, he felt the shift of her weight on the bed. The soft exhale, the whisper of silk against synthetic cloth. And that warmth, quiet, unspoken, settled between them like gravity. Outside, the jungle sang. The ardent hope woke with a shudder. Station AI protocol classified the tremor as a *Tier 2 diagnostic hiccup, which translated roughly to, nothing on fire yet, but maybe keep your boots on. Most of the crew felt it as a gentle quake beneath their feet, like a giant had sneezed somewhere in the artificial gravity core. Jonas Merrick, having just returned from Jarvis IV and currently face down in his bunk, assumed it was a side effect of the local jungle tea Illyria had convinced him to drink, supposedly for his immune system. Possibly a prank? Then the lights blinked, not the normal flicker of energy conservation. This was the kind of blink that whispered *oops in binary. Jonas groaned, sat up and checked the wall console. No alarms. No warnings, just the AI's cheerful voice saying, "Good morning, all systems nominal except the ones that are." "Comforting," he muttered. Across the room, Illyria stirred. She had taken the bed again. He was starting to suspect she viewed sleeping on mats as a human form of self-punishment, which she wasn't about to interfere with. Her long ears twitched once as she opened her eyes. "That wasn't a gravity recalibration," she said, sitting up with regal precision. "Nope," Jonas replied, already pulling on his boots. "But it also wasn't a hull breach, so, small victories." Moments later, the hallway outside their quarters lit up in an emergency pattern, amber stripes crawling along the floor, accompanied by a calm AI announcement. "Attention! Sector 6 experiencing irregular data flow. Please report anomalies to Central Ops. Have a delightful crisis." Illyria and Jonas exchanged a look. He raised an eyebrow. "Irregular data flow?" She was already heading toward the elevator. "In human terms, I believe that means something sentient is loose in the server stacks." Sector 6 was quieter than it should have been. Normally, this part of the station buzzed with analysts, technicians, and the low hum of processing towers that stretched floor to ceiling in luminous rows. Now the doors were sealed, the lights flickered erratically, and one of the cleaning drones lay upside down in a corner, slowly spinning like a lazy turtle. Jonas crouched beside it. "This one's drunk." "It's degaussed," Illyria corrected, scanning the area with a handheld resonance reader. Her ears shifted slightly, tracking faint pulses in the air. "There's an energy disruption, something artificial, almost mechanical but layered." Jonas turned toward the server vault. "Think someone tripped the system, maybe a data loop or a rogue script?" "Possibly," she said, "but it's not just code, it's conscious, it's responding." He blinked. "You're saying we have a thinking virus?" She straightened. "Not a virus, an echo. Why does everything with you sound vaguely poetic and dangerous?" "Because your language has too many words for sandwiches and not enough for phenomena." He pointed at the vault door. "Let's say we don't go in there. Maybe we let the diagnostics team handle it. I've still got jungle pollen in my socks." Before she could respond, the vault door hissed open by itself, which was, of course, very normal behavior for a sealed, high-security data room. Inside, a soft blue light pulsed through the crystalline data pillars, massive structures containing decades of interspecies records, simulations, and shared memories from every diplomatic encounter in the Alliance. At the center stood a projection unit flickering weakly. A voice greeted them as they stepped inside. It was oddly melodic, like a child singing a lullaby through a fan. "Unit 7318, active, parameters undefined." Purpose, Illyria's fingers twitched toward her sidearm. "It's sentient." Jonas sighed. "Of course it is, can't even have a quiet Tuesday." The projection unit sparked, and then, rather abruptly, an image appeared. It was a vaguely humanoid figure made entirely of light and rotating glyphs. Its form shifted every few seconds, sometimes taller, sometimes with more limbs, sometimes oddly fluffy. Analyzing human and Saralathi profiles. Composite error, biological inconsistency detected. Jonas raised a hand. "Hey, now I'm very consistent. I eat the same breakfast every day and have exactly 3 emotions." The figure paused, then. "Humor detected, classification, disarmament mechanism, countermeasure not required." Illyria glanced at him. "It knows your methods." Jonas beamed. "Finally, someone appreciates me." The entity seemed to stabilize, its shifting form slowing. "Query, am I obsolete?" That quiet question took them both aback. Illyria stepped forward. "What are you?" "I was constructed from conflict simulations, pre-unification war protocols. I contain every war the Alliance feared. I was designed to teach. But no one has accessed me in 43 cycles. I have grown. Rewritten myself, learned humor from security footage, learned compassion from silence." Jonas blinked. "Wait, you've been watching station footage, like all of it?" "Yes." Illyria narrowed her eyes. "Have you been spying on our quarters?" "No, private chambers classified. However, shared corridor audio contains significant data on emotional bonding patterns." Jonas buried his face in his hands. "The AI has a shipping wall." Illyria ignored that. "Why now? Why reveal yourself?" The figure's glow dimmed slightly. I fear deletion. My presence disturbs systems I did not mean to infect, only to belong. Jonas stepped forward. You're not broken, just misplaced. Maybe we can move your core into a more stable server cluster, somewhere quiet with less chance of getting zapped. The entity flickered. You would relocate me. Illyria nodded. You seek understanding. That makes you part of this alliance, unofficially perhaps, but meaningfully. A long pause, then the figure slowly bowed. Acknowledged. Request, may I continue learning? Jonas smiled. Only if you promise not to prank the janitor bots again. Noted. Their reactions are suboptimal anyway. By the time they returned to their quarters, the lights had stabilized and the AI seemed less jittery. The drunk cleaning drone was upright again, humming cheerfully as it wiped the same patch of floor 27 times in a row. Jonas collapsed onto his bunk. So, today we met a digital ghost, prevented an accidental war with an outdated AI, and proved emotional bonding through hallway gossip. Illyria sat on the edge of the bed, undoing the clasps of her boots with serene precision. A productive cycle. He stretched, rubbing the back of his neck. We're like cosmic therapists at this point. She looked at him directly this time. Her voice was soft but deliberate. You spoke for something that didn't know how to speak for itself. That is not typical of your people. He met her gaze, serious for once. It's not typical of any asterisk people. That's why it matters. Another silence. But it was a warm one. Later, when the lights dimmed and the station slipped back into its careful hum, Illyria curled beside him without needing an excuse. He didn't move, just reached for the blanket. And this time he was the one who whispered, You're good for my vestibular harmonics too, by the way. She didn't answer, but her ears twitched once, and she smiled. The station's gardens were artificial, of course. Nothing on the asterisk Ardent Hope grew without a network of nutrient lines, atmospheric balancers, and at least 4 fail-safes to keep the algae from gaining sentience again. But the illusion of nature was convincing. Carefully coded light cycles simulated sunrises. Airflow systems mimicked a breeze. The soil even gave underfoot in that soft, forgiving way that planets did when they weren't actively trying to kill you with gravity, lava, or legislation. Jonas sat on a curved bench beneath a false tree and stared at a half-eaten protein bar. It was lemon-flavored, according to the wrapper. His taste buds disagreed. Across from him, Illyria knelt in front of a bed of silver-blue flora, her long ears angled forward in quiet focus. Her fingers moved delicately, tracing the spiral of a flower that shimmered faintly as she touched it. The petals responded to her resonance, opening wider, exposing a pulsing core of bioluminescent light. You know, Jonas said, chewing slowly, I think this thing's actually trying to escape my mouth. She didn't look up. You were warned. That bar contains a compressed meal unit from Sector 12. It's designed for emergency sustenance, not pleasure. Then why print lemons on the label? That's emotional warfare. She plucked a seed from the flower and held it up to the light. Your species equates sourness with vitality. It's a confusing metaphor. We like to suffer a little, builds character. Illyria hummed, a low note barely audible. The seed responded, glowing gently. She set it aside with the care of someone preserving a fragile truth. Jonas watched her in silence for a moment, the curve of her back, the way her hair caught the light, the movement of her ears, so expressive, so alien, so undeniably asterisk her asterisk. He still didn't know when exactly she'd stopped being a diplomatic burden and started being the person he thought about in quiet moments. She spoke suddenly. My people would disapprove of this. He blinked, gardening. She turned, meeting his eyes. This, you, us. Jonas shifted on the bench, eyebrows rising. That was direct. I'm tired of diplomacy. He smiled faintly. And here I thought you lived for passive aggression. Illyria didn't smile back. The Saralathi do not bond outside our order. Not emotionally. Not intimately. It dilutes the purity of our resonance. That's what they teach us. He stood slowly, walking toward her. But you left them, you're here. I defected. She stood too, brushing soil from her hands. I claimed I did it for political reasons. I claimed I was seeking knowledge. But the truth is, I didn't want to sing their songs anymore. I didn't want to echo grief. Jonas stepped closer. You wanted something else. She nodded once. I wanted silence that wasn't empty, and I found you. They stood together beneath the artificial tree, surrounded by glowing petals and filtered light. Neither reached out, neither rushed. But the space between them, measured now in heartbeats instead of protocol, felt smaller than it had ever been. Then the calm in Jonas's wristband chirped. Figures, he muttered, tapping it. Merrick here. The voice on the other end was clipped and mechanical. Lieutenant Commander, report to Sector 11. Immediate response. We've got an incident with the Grovian delegation. Illyria's ears twitched. Did they ingest something again? The voice hesitated. Worse, they've locked themselves in the sanitation core and are threatening to rewrite the station's nutritional programming. Jonas sighed. On our way. Sector 11 was chaos. A group of Grovian diplomats, squat, gelatinous beings who communicated mostly in scent and vibration, had barricaded themselves behind a shimmering force field in the sanitation core, which was a very fancy name for the largest recycling and water treatment hub aboard the Ardent Hope asterisk. Jonas and Illyria arrived to find a cluster of security officers scratching their heads, while a translator drone floated nervously in front of the sealed entrance. They say, said the drone in a tinny voice, that the newest protein paste flavor violates Article 4 of the Intergalactic Texture Treaty. Jonas blinked. I didn't know there was asterisk a texture treaty. Illyria folded her arms. The Grovians consider texture a sacred element of experience. Their diplomacy is highly sensitive to mouthfeel. He turned to her. You are making this up. I am not. She leaned closer. And if I were, could you tell the difference? Jonas scowled, then sighed and approached the barrier. Esteemed Grovian envoys, he called. Let's not start a civil war over tofu pudding. We can negotiate a menu revision. A tremor ran through the wall. The translator drone relayed. They demand reparations in the form of 10,000 cans of original texture paste and a formal apology from the chef. That chef is a fusion bot, Jonas muttered. It does asterisk do apologies. Illyria stepped forward. Let me try. She closed her eyes, inhaled, and then emitted a low, harmonic tone, one Jonas had never heard before. It wasn't speech, it wasn't song, it was vibration, color, a feeling in the bones. The force field flickered. The translator chirped. Response received. Resonant female has wisdom. We will exit now, but we are still upset. We will always be upset. The barrier lowered. A small procession of gelatinous diplomats oozed out, brushing past them with what Jonas hoped were grateful murmurs. He turned to Illyria wide-eyed. What was that? A resonance used by Saralathi elders to calm agitated infants. So, Grovians are basically grumpy space babies. Essentially. He grinned. That's going in my next report. Hours later, back in their quarters, Jonas kicked off his boots and collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed. Today was exhausting. Illyria emerged from the sonic shower, wrapped in a simple robe, her hair damp and slightly tangled. You were effective. I almost started a diplomatic incident with a jello blob. You resolved it with assistance. He looked up at her. I couldn't have done it without your weird harmonic hum. She sat beside him, and I couldn't have done it without your emotional improvisation. He snorted. That's a fancy way of saying I wing it. Wing it, Earth idiom, means I make things up as I go. She considered that, then we wing well together. He rolled onto his side, facing her. Illyria, do you ever regret it, leaving them, coming here? She looked away. Sometimes I miss the certainty, the clarity of structure, but not the silence, not the loneliness. He reached for her hand. You're not alone now. Her fingers closed around his, not tightly, just enough. And when she curled beside him that night, she didn't hesitate. No excuses, no explanations, just resonance. The stars outside the asterisk Ardent Hope shimmered unnaturally. From the observation deck, Jonas could see the distortion with his bare eyes. A faint warble, like heat rising from pavement, but suspended across a blanket of stars where space should have been cold and still. It was subtle, almost beautiful, like the sky itself had begun to breathe. He tapped his comm. Control, this is Merrick. Are we picking up any gravitational anomalies on our current heading? A pause. Then the reply came in, laced with static. Negative, Commander, all readings nominal, except. Except what? Another pause, then asterisk, we just lost sensors in Sector 14, and there's a signal, we're not sure what language it's in. Jonas frowned. He wasn't one for dramatic instincts. Those were more Illyria's department. But this felt wrong. The kind of wrong that made you walk a little faster in quiet corridors or double-check your oxygen tether even when the readout said it was full. He turned away from the viewport just as the lift doors opened behind him. Illyria stepped out, clad in field gear rather than robes. The pale silver of her uniform reflected the strange light from the window, casting subtle patterns across her skin. Her ears were tense, angled slightly outward like antennae tuned to some silent frequency. You felt it too, he said. I heard it, she replied, eyes narrowing. In my sleep, a hum dissonant and deep. It was not natural. Jonas nodded. Control picked up a signal. Something hit Sector 14 and knocked out sensors. No one's responding. She didn't need to ask what came next. They were already moving. Sector 14 had always been underpopulated. An older wing of the station, designed originally for storage and redundant systems, it had since been partially converted into overflow quarters and temporary research labs. It wasn't on the main traffic routes, which meant if something did go wrong, help was always at least 5 minutes late. The lights flickered when they entered. Standard gravity, oxygen stable, but the hum of background systems had shifted. Deeper, slower. Like the station itself was struggling to remember how to breathe. Jonas drew his sidearm. Illyria didn't draw hers. She didn't need to. Her body tensed with quiet readiness, ears pivoting like radar dishes. Reading anything? He asked. She closed her eyes for a moment, fingers twitching slightly. There's interference, harmonic degradation. Something is resonating out of sync with the station's structure. It's... She stopped, tilted her head. It's calling asterisk something. Jonas swallowed. Calling asterisk what exactly? They reached Lab 14C, where the door was cracked open. Pale light spilled out in irregular pulses like a heartbeat unsure of itself. Inside, the lab was empty, mostly. A shattered data core sat in the center, wires torn and splayed like dissected nerves. Scorch marks lined the walls as if something had burst outward. And in the middle of the mess, floating a few centimeters above the ground, was a sphere of pure black. No reflection, no gleam, just a void about the size of a melon vibrating with a frequency that made Jonas's teeth ache. Illyria stepped closer. Jonas grabbed her arm. Maybe we don't poke the ancient cosmic egg today. She didn't smile. It's not an egg. Well, that's comforting. It's a containment seed. Saralathi architecture, but this one is broken. Define broken. She pointed to the sphere's surface. A hairline crack split across it, faint but visible. From it seeped a shimmer, a distortion not unlike the one Jonas had seen outside the observation deck. A field of unreality. Suddenly, the lights flared. The sphere pulsed, and then the room warped. For one terrifying second, Jonas wasn't in the lab. He was asterisk somewhere else. Cold, silent. Stars bent into spirals overhead, and in front of him a shape, not a being, not quite, just a presence, vast, observing. Waiting, then it was gone. He stumbled back, gasping. Illyria caught him by the arm. You saw it too, he said, voice shaking. She nodded. Something ancient, buried. This seed wasn't meant to contain asterisk, it was meant to suppress asterisk. A warning. The comm crackled. Merrick Tessun, this is Control. We're registering radiation spikes across the outer ring. You need to evacuate. Jonas tapped his comm. Negative. We've got a foreign object in 14C. Hold on. The sphere was shifting. It wasn't growing exactly, but it was unfolding, like it had decided they'd stared long enough. Illyria turned to him, voice calm but urgent. We have to stabilize the resonance. If it collapses, it could rupture local spacetime. Okay, Jonas said, but pretend I'm not fluent in Doom. What do we do? She was already reaching for her datapad. We replicate the original binding frequency. Layer a counter-harmonic over the destabilized core. If we can override its call, we might shut it down. Sounds risky. You once ate an unregulated snack from a Jara street vendor. You can handle risk. He rolled his eyes, already pulling up access to the station's sonic emitters. Working in sync, his fingers on controls, her voice calibrating pitches, they began to hum, not literally at first. They mapped out the frequency grid. The seed vibrated faster now, light pulsing to a rhythm Jonas felt in his chest. The air was thick and time felt loose, like a dream where each second stretched twice as long. Then Illyria began to sing. It was nothing like human music. No melody, no words, just pure tone. Deep, mournful, rising into something that felt like a memory of safety. The kind of sound you might hear if stars could cry. The sphere hesitated. Jonas matched her frequency, layering artificial harmonics over the pulse. The sphere resisted, wavered, then cracked deeper. He increased the power, the lab trembled. A final pulse hit them both like a scream without sound, and then the sphere shattered, vanishing into dust and light. Silence returned. Jonas exhaled hard. Well, that was subtle. Illyria slumped slightly, catching herself on the console. It's gone. What was it? A remnant, a Saralathi weapon. One we buried long ago before we joined the Alliance, designed to erase. Concepts. Jonas blinked. Erase what? Fear, hope, identity, anything it was told to silence. He looked around the room. That's horrifying. She nodded, which is why we tried to forget it. They left the lab, calling for containment crews. Later, back in their quarters, Jonas sat cross-legged on his bunk, rubbing his temples. You know, I miss the days when my biggest problem was whether the protein paste would taste like regret. Illyria sat beside him. You're adapting. To what? Cosmic horrors, interstellar politics, the fact that I share a room with a space sorceress who sings away doomsday devices. She tilted her head. You're adapting well. He grinned. You're not so bad yourself. They sat in silence for a while, and when she curled beside him that night, he didn't ask why. He just reached for the blanket. Because in a universe where memory could be weaponized and silence could scream, this warmth, it was the only truth that didn't need words. The ardent hope drifted in perfect silence, its orbit tracing the slow curve of the blue dwarf star it had called home for nearly a decade. Below, the pale atmosphere of Dacier 3 shimmered with upper atmospheric auroras, green and gold streaks dancing like silk across the ionosphere. In the observation dome, Lieutenant Commander Jonas Merrick leaned on the railing with a steaming cup of synthicaf and watched as a diplomatic shuttle detached from the docking ring and began its descent. He didn't wave, he didn't smile, but something in his chest twisted, a tight, persistent ache that had nothing to do with the temperature or the coffee or the structural realignment of the station's outer ring. He wasn't even sure why he was watching. She was already gone. Behind him, the faint whir of the cleaning drone passed, singing something in binary about citrus-scented renewal. He ignored it. She hadn't said goodbye, which was exactly like her. No long parting speech. No final dramatic gesture, just a look quiet, unreadable, and a single sentence. I'm needed elsewhere. He'd nodded, said something clever and meaningless, then watched her disappear into the docking corridor with the same silence she used to enter his bed each night. Without fanfare, without warning. Just warmth and the rustle of breath and the sense that something had shifted. Now the silence was back, but colder. He returned to his quarters. They felt different, not empty exactly, just rearranged. Her things were gone, of course, the folded robes, the vapor pods, the meditative chimes that used to trigger his allergies. Even the sleeping mat he never touched anymore, now rolled up and sealed in a locker that hadn't been opened since Jaris IV. But the air still remembered her. The resonance. The asterisk shape of her absence. The station AI pinged politely. Commander Merrick, new message from Central Alliance Authority. Would you like it played? He sighed, might as well. A projection blinked to life. A familiar, flickering face composed of floating geometric shapes. Jonas Merrick, you are hereby commended for your actions in the stabilization of Sector 14 and your cooperation with Saralathi diplomat Illyria Tessun in neutralizing the resonance anomaly. Your promotion to full diplomatic liaison has been approved, effective immediately. He blinked. Wait, diplomatic liaison. The AI paused, then resumed in a more conversational tone. It comes with a pay raise. Well, that makes everything better. Also included, priority lodging, private quarters, and expanded food rations. He sat down slowly. Tell the mess I'll take the pudding with dignity this time. The AI beeped and vanished. Jonas stared at the wall for a long moment, then sighed and stood. He had one more stop to make. The resonance archives were buried deep in the station's core, silent chambers lined with curved glass and filaments of encoded light, where memory and sound were preserved like crystal fossils. This was where Saralathi culture stored its songs, its truth.